Welcome to another episode of the Best Book Club, the podcast where I discuss the best stories with the best minds in the community. I'm your host, Selim, aka NeufAtora, and on this episode, I'll be discussing Two Worlds once again, but this time with the author of this absolute classic, AnimePanties. Thank you for joining me, AP.
Thank you for having me on. I'm super excited, even though we're only with audio. I wore a nice dress shirt and tie and everything. Wanted to be nice and dressed up.
I appreciate you dressing for the occasion, because this is a very special. I think this is a very special occasion. It's the first time, the first of many, I hope, of you appearing on my podcast. So I will start this out with a summary, which I'm hoping to put in more. So basically, the story is a college project forms the basis of an unlikely partnership between polar opposites, steadily drawing two entirely separate worlds together through exploration, deception, introspection, and most importantly, wedgies. Would you say that's a pretty apt summary for the story?
It's a good sell. Fuck. If I ever make a novel, that's going on the back. That was really good. That's good. That's a good. That's a good sum. It sums it up, but it leaves enough to entice people to give a read. That was great.
Yeah, that's exactly what I try to do, because I also did one for Lucy and Daniela and Flame Over Darkness. Yep. So yeah, that's basically what I'm trying to do with these summaries. Is I guess for the people who listen or watch without actually reading the story yet, you get basically if it were a novel or a book in print, then you read the back cover. It gives you just the smallest taste.
Yeah. And if there's anybody who's listening who hasn't read the story, who liked that description, deviantart.com/AnimePanties, full Two Worlds on there, parts 1 through 9. Check them out.
And I will be linking that as well in the description.
There you go.
So, to get into the story, I'm sad to say this because, well, I'll let the numbers speak for themselves. This story has, on Lucky Fetish forums, it has just under 18,000 views. And on DeviantArt, it does a little bit better with 38,000 views.
Uh-huh.
It's much less than other stories like Lucy and Daniela and Luckily Unlucky, yet it is 100% in the same level and category as them. And many people cite it as an inspiration to start or improve their writing. And it absolutely, certainly deserves much more acclaim than it has right now.
Thank you.
It is 100% a classic.
No. For sure. I mean, Lucy and Danielle being stickied helps a lot. But then you got stories like Luckily Unlucky, and they just blew up like mad fire.
Yeah, it's kind of sad that it's nice that some of the stories that truly deserve it got the recognition that they did, and I'm almost 100% sure that Lucy and Daniela did get most of the exposure it got before it was stickied, and I think it was stickied probably because it was one of the most popular, although I don't know why. That's one of the only questions I have about the board, is why that's the only story, although I'm not complaining.
I am. It's favoritism. There's no two ways about it. But no, I mean, no, it was genuinely a very good story. I think for some reason Lucky, like himself, really liked it. So he's like, fuck it, like it's my, because he does have that approach. He's like, fuck it, it's my board, I'll do whatever. So he did have a lot of fame before that, but in terms of just like literally anybody who even approaches the fictional story section was gonna click it. But no, there is a general point though to be made that it was a little bit more overlooked. I think it doesn't really bother me. I think the nice comments and impact that it's had on actual writers to me is sort of what is most important. And I think that over time there's sort of been an appreciation for it, for what it was, and it's up there for anybody at any time to read and maybe get inspired to do something. So it doesn't bother me too much. No.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, because I agree. It definitely had a much higher impact than just the views that it got. Because most of those views are just random people reading it,
Mm.
and it
Hmm.
definitely had much further reaching effects. Um,
Yeah, I'd like to hope so. Yeah.
I mean, and you can look at people like Hans Gutherson and JCCW. They're
Hmm.
two great examples of wanting who were inspired to start or improve their writing because of it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I think. Well, I've said this many times, but Hans was obviously a big inspiration for the story, and a big inspiration for me to even start writing in general, which we could go into. But I think it was. I think it was good for him to see that somebody else was inspired by his stories, and really somebody who wanted to uh, try and sort of match him. Uh, and it's debatable whether I have, but I think that sort of not rivalry, but just sort of like, man, this guy's work is great. Like, fuck, I got to do something great now too. That's always led to the best content, I think, in the community
Absolutely.
for sure.
Yeah, and just in general, in the world, competition always bears the best fruit, in my opinion.
Yeah. 100%.
So, the first part, you released it on August 24th, 2015. Where
Oh
were you
yeah.
in life at that time?
First year uni. I was fucking finding my wings. I was figuring things out. I was very happy to start university. High school was decent. It wasn't like this horrid time in my life, but it was rife with some personal issues that came up that got distracted from things. And overall, by the sophomore, whatever Americans call, it, I'm not sure, but 12th grade, I kind of knew that these people were not going to be long-term friends, so I was looking for new people to kind of become friends with. And in that sort of exploratory time for myself in uni, with emboldened sort of confidence from starting in this new place with new people and experiences, I sort of broke whatever chains of hesitancy I had and sort of like, fuck it. Like, I like these stories. I've been reading them for how many years now? I'm just going to do one myself.
Okay. And that's it is interesting like when you think about what you just said about the rivalry sort of and the competition with Hans with Lucy and Daniela.
Yeah.
He was also at that when he was writing that story. It was his first year of university as well. Um,
Yeah, we're the same age, luckily. It's kind of weird how things worked out to be so parallel, but yeah, we're about the same age. So he did start a little bit before me, but
yeah,
not that much earlier. Not that
now
much
just a
earlier.
couple months.
Yeah.
Um, okay, where did the idea for two worlds come from, and what did it look like in its first iteration?
Oh, it's a good question. Um, I wanted specifically a story dealing with two characters. I wanted a back and forth. I think partly inspired by the sort of not literally the dynamic that Lucy and Daniela had, but just the sort of like just having two people discover something and explore something at the same time. Not even necessarily together, but just those sort of things colliding. That's why the name Two Worlds came so early to me, because that was literally just all I wanted to do. I was like, you know, I think this concept has legs. Let me really try and like create two completely sort of opposite characters, which would become more realized as the chapters went on, and sort of explore what would be someone's absolute revel into the wedgie fetish and another person's absolute sort of dismay and hatred of the fetish and how those worlds sort of combined. A loose starting of one girl who figures out that she likes him, one girl that figures out, well, something else, and then it just sort of got legs from there. But the concept of two people, two worlds, literally the title, is kind of what inspired it.
Okay, so yeah, you really just you liked the dynamic that Lucy and Daniela had, and you wanted to see that expanded into its own story, essentially.
Yeah, and with my own sort of spin on it,
Right.
not sort of the bully nerd dynamic, but more
Yeah.
sort of a sort of what would end up becoming, a sort of you know manipulator and wild card sort of thing, the control versus the chaos sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, for sure.
Well, yeah, you definitely changed the dynamic of it entirely because looking at later in the story where Lisa is the one she's the one controlling everything, but she wants to role play as the nerd.
Yeah.
Whereas
No,
it would be the opposite way in Lucy and Daniela.
very much so. Very much so. And I think that whole thing of giving into that sort of domination against her was, innately erotic,
Yes.
but was something that definitely, developed as the story went on. I'm not somebody who has everything intricately planned before each chapter or even just as the story goes along. And so, as much as I started with a general idea for the two characters, a lot of the actual intricate details came as I was writing it, which is why some people point out that by the end they're really different people. Yeah, because I figured it out at that point. Like that's just what I wanted to do. Like I didn't start with like, oh yeah, then this is how they're going to get there. It was literally just, fuck, you know what? I want them to be this, and it was. That's how a lot of writers go. A lot of
Yes.
just mediums and things like that. I some examples from certain TV shows and things like that where writers sort of take it to sometimes for the worse, but in this case, in my opinion, at least for my taste, they developed into what I wanted them to be.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say like some people say that they feel like different characters because that is that's definitely the take I had in the podcast where I talked about Two Worlds with Hans and
I listen to the podcast. Don't worry about that. I got like no, I genuinely it was really interesting hearing sort of different perspectives of it.
yeah.
And I mean, again, I'm not sure if how much you were going to ask about this later or not. Like, I'm definitely very critical of the story in hindsight, for sure. What people got to remember is not only was this my first ever story, but like
Right.
I hadn't like read anything. Like, yeah, within the community,
Wow.
but I don't read. I don't read books. Before that, I had read one book, and since then, I've read one book.
Wow.
Like, I've read the two books that I've read are Fahrenheit 451 and 1984. Those
Well,
are the only two.
Two very good stories to read then.
They are, no, no, they are. They are, and they inspired me in sort of subtle ways. So I look at Two Worlds like just for me personally. I think people take what they want in terms of how it influenced them, but just for me, Two Worlds for me is just how I grew as a writer and how I grew into just figuring it out. Like I had no clue. I had to like look up rules for punctuation. I had no clue. Like
Really?
it's yeah, it was bad. Like and that's why some of the stuff is really rough and when I read it, when I go back and read it, I'm like, "Ah, shit. I just didn't know what I was doing." Like I was just fucking throwing shit at the wall. So that's the importance and significance for me.
Yeah.
And that's really what I look at it as. Yes, does it have some, you know, like the ways things are introduced, like they could have used more development, sure. But it was just I was just throwing shit at the wall. Like I was just trying. That's just what it comes down to.
Yeah. I mean, since you did listen to the podcast, you know that I did take a pretty hard stance against it.
Yeah.
And I don't want you to think that like that is my only opinion. Like I'm not like 100. I'm not against it. Like I'm not against the story at all. I just didn't want the podcast to be like a circle jerk for the story. So because
I would have loved that. I would.
Absolutely.
You would have had one extremely happy viewer. In a way, though, that is genuinely one thing that writers within the community get the absolute least of, which is constructive and like forward
Right.
criticism
Yes.
about their work in terms of an actual from a literary standpoint. I can actually explain some of the gripes. I know you specifically mentioned that the thing with Lisa at the end feels like it comes out of nowhere. I sort
Yes,
of
the
had in my
love.
head that that I wanted to do a chapter that because I focused on Julia for like 2 or 3 chapters in a row, and I had kind
Hmm.
of in my head that like one on like maybe I should do one where I before we go into this grand finale like to show Lisa. There's mainly two reasons why I didn't. One was because I really wanted it to be just like I wanted people to not know how Lisa was feeling going into that moment, and I
Mm.
think it does, and that's why the I think the ending hits as hard as it does is because we didn't know, and we're
Yeah.
sort of with this huge reveal, and it's essentially a twist on the entire story. That's actually something I think two worlds should be remembered as a twist story. Like the final chapter is very much a twist where Julia was actually lying that whole time. It's revealed, and the whole thing is just somewhat recontextualized. But it was pretty much that. I wanted to leave some intrigue for the ending, and also because I was tired of writing. I was like, I had so many ideas for a new story, and I just wanted it to be over. And I thought,
Yeah.
like, fuck, am I gonna write one on one? Nah, like I'm already making the outline for friend sessions. I don't want to be in here any longer than I could. I actually had ideas, to be honest, about like a continuation of Two Worlds where there was like a friend of Julia who like sees after they get together in the canon ending, who's like not like who's like who sees that Lisa's like a sort of snake and like wants to try to separate them. And I
Hmm.
scrapped all of it. I didn't give a shit
Fair.
about that. I was
That's
fuck. I
very.
want to.
It's interesting, at least.
Yeah, no. It would have been. I could have given it legs, but then
You
I
could
thought to
do it
myself, I'm like,
still.
fuck. Well, with the way that, well, technically, I actually still could because the stuff in Friend Sessions doesn't retcon per se what could have happened still back in the timeline. But it's I wanted more characters. I just wanted more pieces
Mm.
to work with. I was tired of working with the same two chess pieces,
Yeah.
and now it's like I would have added one, but only like one more. Like it wouldn't have been that much different. I wanted like that's why I made like 6 new characters. Like I want a toy box.
Yeah.
Like I'm tired of these two little things.
Okay. I had some thoughts, but I'll get to them later. Um, how did you come up with Lisa and Julia?
Um, it was interesting. I think the biggest I knew they were like I told you, I knew they were going to be opposites in sort of these two colliding worlds and how they're
Right.
going to and how they were going to clash. Like that was the main premise for the story. But to be honest, a lot of the specifics I didn't know until I started writing. It was just my process at the time. I just because I had so little idea of like how to really plan something out. And I think it was such a spontaneous decision for me that just chapter by chapter, I sort of developed more and more. Obviously, the first chapter with the first wedgie kind of introduced things, but to the level that Lisa has that sort of controlling nature and the spiraling of Julia throughout the story only really came as I was writing it.
Mm.
So again, I had some things. I've posted some off comments before on my DeviantArt page about how even small shit like having J and L, the two letters, kind of shows some of the differences between them. But a
Right.
lot of like the specifics for the characters like only really came as I was writing. And actually, you knew eventually I was going to bring up Death Note. But some of the similarities, you know it was going to happen. But
Yeah.
so I just want to point out something here. When I say that I was inspired by Death Note, I really don't mean that literally. Like I was inspired by ways that I don't think are like not a surface level. It's like, oh, like Julia's not like L. Yeah, I'm not trying to like recreate the fucking thing. Like the main things that I was inspired by is like an interview with the author, for example, the
Yeah.
mangaka rather, and he said that all he did, he like Death Note is a super elaborate whatever story, and it shocked people when he said that his process was just how am I gonna get light into a situation and I got to get him out of it. That was
Mm.
it. And he just went chapter by chapter.
Yeah.
And then that sort of spoke to me, and I was like, well, I just kind of want to write, and you know what? I'm just going to figure it out. I'm just going to, like, I don't know. I'm just gonna have Lisa do situations and stuff to Julia, and I'm just gonna figure it out from there. Lisa, the whole concept of Lisa's, lie and whatever came the chapter I wrote it. Like, it's not something that I had hugely hugely planned in hindsight, but it was just something that came to me as I wrote it. That's my process, and when it comes to the foundation and forming of the characters and their intricacies, not for the full extent, but some of them are developing like as you're reading them. Like that chapter is where I thought of it. That's just how
Yeah.
I worked.
Okay. That's actually a good segue into my next question. What was your writing process for the story, and how or has it changed since then?
Um, it's definitely changed a lot. Um, I I plan things out a lot more. Um, but I think in the same way, I leave a lot still to be sort of kept for me to figure out on the page.
Yeah.
Um, I, I sort of I realized that some of me leaving that open birthed a lot of creativity. Um, just for example, like I didn't plan out fucking like this whole thing of dilation. I didn't plan it out in friend sessions. I just started writing and I was like, fuck, what if their eyes got like really big? I was like, shit, what could that mean? Like, what could
Hmm.
that mean for the characters? What could that imply? So I didn't plan that. I don't know. I just wrote it. So I think I've kept that aspect, but at the same time, like I want to hit certain beats. I want to do certain things, and I think realistically, the main way that my writing process has sort of evolved and over the years, sort of coming from Two Worlds, has been just not being afraid to go into detail when I want to, not being afraid of wild metaphors when I feel like it. That's the one thing Fahrenheit 451 taught me more than anything. Actually, is Fahrenheit 451 and 1984, to be honest. Just fucking throw in a metaphor. Who cares? There's no rules for this. Like,
No.
it's you're putting words on a page, man. Like, oh well, technically speaking, you shouldn't be putting a metaphor. Man, 1984 has a fucking like 3 chapter or 4 chapter just break away from the story. Let me have exposition about the world we live in.
Yeah.
Like, if you tried to do that, you'd be fucking lambasted. Why the fuck is this guy breaking away from from the story for 4 chapters for exposition? And it's one of the most popular novels of all time. There's no rules for this.
Hmm.
So I've stopped listening to rules. I've stopped trying to critique. Oh, I guess I should have less metaphors here and there. And it's up to interpretation whether people enjoy that style more or less. But it's more freeing to me. It makes writing more fun to me, and it's what I'm gonna do.
Absolutely. And you said it right there. Is like it really comes down to each writer's individual style. Like that.
Yes.
I think that is really there's no set in stone rules for what a book or a story should be. I
Mm.
think the rules come from how a person develops their style, and
Yes.
even those aren't set in stone. Like people break out of their own styles all the time. And 1984 really is one of the greatest stories of all time. I remember when I read it in school for an assignment, I hated it because the ending was just there was no good conclusion. But
Oh, it punches you in the gut. It punches you right in the fucking gut.
reading it back on my own terms, it is to this day it's still so far ahead of most other novels that have come out.
Mm-hmm.
So it is. I definitely thinking back on reading the story, reading Two Worlds. I can definitely see the influence it had on the story.
Yeah, no, it's like it's sort of having that style. I mean, a lot of the major writers always talk about how well I took my looked at how many publishers and it took like I think Florida the Flies took like 40 something.
Yeah,
But like you got to stick to your guns. You got
if
to
you know
stick to your guns.
something is good, you know it's good.
Yeah. Yeah, and like and that's we could go into sort of the psychology of a writer and whatnot, but in my opinion, like you should be the biggest fan of your work. Like you
but
should
also the biggest critic.
absolutely. That's that is true. That is true from a quality standpoint because you never want to get blinded. But
Yes.
in my opinion, once you felt like you've worked really hard at it, if you like hate it, then I don't really understand why you're doing it. And
That's
I
true.
get that I get that there are cynical people out there who just, even though they make something great and they still hate it, but they put it anyways and everybody loves it. There's sort of those individual cases, but like, man, like again, you could do anything. So like
Mhm.
it's such an open book that like, why aren't you writing the absolute number one thing that you like? Like I'll say it right now,
Yes.
Two Worlds Friend Sessions is what I love. It's what I love to read. It's what I love to experience, and I don't know. I think we should all think that. I think as soon as you tone something down because you're worried it'll be too much, or this would be cool, but it's kind of a little much. Oh, come
It doesn't
on, man.
it doesn't play to the audience.
Yeah, yeah. It's always a frustrating endeavor whenever I see a writer pull back. It's always like,
Absolutely.
what if you did go there? Like, what
Yeah.
if you did?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I 100% agree with you there. I'm one of the biggest proponents for, and I think the content that I produce shows this, that you should always produce the content that you want to consume. That
Hmm.
I think that is not even a rule of thumb. I think that's just something everybody should live by, and not even just the wedgie fetish, but in
Yeah.
life, that people should put out what they want to consume.
Yeah. No,
It,
100%. I mean, a lot of people, and that's sort of the way that the biggest standpoint that I have right now is that I only really write what I want to write, and I don't care too much anymore about view counts and how well something does, and how many times it includes the word wedgie and shit like that.
yeah.
I just I'm at the point where I want to see certain stories finished, and I want to see certain ideas that I have in my head for years and years realized. So that's sort of where I'm at now. But it's difficult for a lot of people who are more ingrained in the community and want to sort of make an impact and want something that everybody can enjoy. It's a tough balancing act.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's an unnecessary balancing act, in my opinion.
Mm.
I, Playing to the audience, yeah, you might be there for a little, you might be relevant for a little while, but I think at the end of the day, it's really the people who put out the ideas that they're truly in love with, and the stories that they've had in their head for years, and they just want to put it out there. It doesn't matter who it's for.
Mm.
Most of the time, it's just for themselves, and they want to get it out, and those stories are the ones that have the most lasting impact.
Mm. No, I definitely agree. I've obviously held that view for a while. I think I think it is in a somewhat unnecessary balancing act. It's just I think very tempting for a lot of people.
Yes.
I think as soon as people taste a little bit of that, it's really hard. Even when I recently uploaded. Apologize for anybody hoping we would talk about Two Worlds for an hour, but the I when I recently uploaded I say I don't care about the views, and genuinely I don't, but like I just uploaded this live streamed wedgies, and it's like the most popular story I've ever fucking released ever, probably because of the title,
Yeah.
and it does still have that alluring of like, maybe I should include wedgie in the title next time.
Hmm.
Maybe I should throw this and that. It's tough, man.
Yeah.
It's tough once you get a little bit of that. See the fave. Big. Scientists have said for a long time, big number means happy, and so you see big number and you get happy. That's
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah. It's I think it's the difference between immediate fame versus lasting impact.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%.
Okay, so to bring it back to Two Worlds,
Please.
I honestly like that's what I love about podcasts. They're just a conversation about anything, so they can go wherever. There's no rules, just like writing.
There you go.
What is your favorite part of this story?
I got to be honest. I think the ending slaps.
To use the youngins' terms.
Listen, I have to stay relevant, okay?
But we just had that conversation about it doesn't matter if you're relevant.
I know. But you see, listen, Indoor Stereo is going to post all the stats, all right? And I gotta the fetish is as young as it's ever been. I gotta be relevant. But no, honestly, no, I really like the way the ending sort of just hits you. Specifically when I wrote the ending, that's when I knew. I'm like, this is all I want to write. Like, it sort of sparked what I would call with myself an obsession for intensity.
Interesting.
I really need just like, listen, I love comedy and I love goofing around and I love slice of life, but I need things to like go to a place. I need things to be dramatic. I need things to be intense. And I think once I tasted that at the end of Two Worlds, I really sort of was like, fuck, you know what? Like, this is again, we talked earlier about what you would want to consume. This is what I like. This is what I would want to consume. This is what I want to write going forward. I will say though, an underrated moment, which is my second favorite moment, is the scene where Julia's just kind of like, got rid of her, and then then Lisa shows up at her house, and they have the sort of thing where Lisa reveals that she hasn't submitted the project yet, and in order for her to release it when she gets back home, saved on her computer, she forces Julia to give her a wedgie. I think the way it was done, rereading it, it's fairly erotic, I think, and also it just sort of, to me, whatever doubts I had in terms of like whether this whole like manipulation character would work or blend into Wedgie's well, I think it proved itself in that moment, and I think it's sort of an underrated moment within the story. And it's sort of when Lisa really gets like that one up on Julia, and I really like that kind of shit. It was only when I fully realized how much I liked it in the ending when I just kind of told myself, like, you know, I need to keep things intense. I need to keep things dramatic, and that plays into like my likes of music and movies, TV shows, anything. I love something that I can sort of, you know, pull my, you know, not pull your brain out, but just sort of vibe and relax. Like, that stuff is great. But the stuff that that's gonna ingrain in my head and become wallpapers for my phone or computer, or just, you know, in sort of embed themselves into my mind as I'm falling asleep, are things that are intense, visceral, that go places.
Things that stick with you.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, and absolutely. I think that specific part is it might be the strong. It might be the strongest part for where how much you were influenced by Death Note came through. That really feels like the most where Lisa is light and her plans are coming to fruition. She's 10, 20 steps ahead of Julia. Even though she's unwittingly falling into Lisa's games and manipulations. It was a very, I think it was a very interesting look at that kind of, because I mean, reading at the time and even before, even rereading it for the previous Two Worlds podcast, I didn't know that Death Note had been such a major influence on you. But thinking back, like, that is absolutely one of the highest points where it shines through, I suppose.
And I think like the relationship with the characters, are still pretty fundamentally different, but just in
Right.
sort of that, just invoking that feeling of sort of having somebody be sort of like you said, like thinking ahead of somebody, and I mean ultimately, like, you know, I think that's why, even though a lot of people do really like Julia as the character, that's why Lisa always sticks with me, is just because even
Mm.
in the end, and I know you prefer the alternate ending,
That'll come
but
later.
you know, she ultimately does. I mean, like she ultimately does get what she wants. She, you
Yes.
know, she falls in love with Julia, and she convinces her to accept it in herself. It's like
Yes.
fuck, like just as an accomplishment alone. I'm like, hey, fuck. I mean, I wrote you. I got to give you credit. Like,
Yeah.
you know. So it's that's sort of why I think genuinely the ending is why the story is remembered as much as it is. I think 100%.
I think the ending, but also the first couple chapters as well,
Mm.
are why it's remembered. Especially the one with the completely natural wedgie, where Lisa's gotten so used to her plans that she doesn't expect it, but it
Yes.
still falls in line. And that honestly reminds me of um, when Light plans around him losing his memory and regaining it.
Ah.
That's what that reminds me of.
See, that doesn't even click in for me. Like that's something that like I think about, like, well, was that a sort of thing, like having something, you know, happen to you that well, I guess it was a part of his plan, but you know, his personality was so different at that point.
Right.
Um, but it's definitely interesting in terms of something happening unexpectedly that's actually not start of her plans that actually kickstarts all her plans.
Right.
Um, yeah, and I think I like I'm I'm very critical of the actual way that the first three chapters are actually written.
Mm-hmm.
But the ideas definitely, I think, do stick out, and I think that's why people, especially JCCW and yourself, talk about why they're fondly remembered. I do got to shout out to a boy, by the way, JCCW. Red Heart Underwear is fucking awesome.
Yes, it
So I'm
is.
glad glad we got some out of culture here. But appreciate that. Um, but no, it's a nice it's a nice hook. It's also like, you
Yeah.
know, a super short, like compared to some of the stuff, especially when I'm writing now, where chapters are upwards of, you know, however many. I think the latest one I did was single spaced on Word, like 21 pages. To have something that was just a short little sweet, here's these two characters, what's going to happen to them, super digestible, super easy to understand,
Mm-hmm.
then it sort of builds from there.
Yeah. Maybe the most important question of the entire podcast, and I think you might have. I think I can discern your answer from what you said already.
Yeah.
Lisa or Julia?
Oh, listen, I love both of they're both, you know, they're both my children and they're both my creation, and I look at them both and I say, you know, I love both of you, but it's got to be Lisa. It's
Yeah.
absolutely got to be Lisa. Julia does genuinely turn into more of the protagonist of the story.
Yeah.
100%. It starts out very Lisa centric, and then it turns into much more of a Julia story. But then it wraps around at the end, and I Hans might have mentioned this to you before. I'm not sure, but he actually caught up on something that even I almost didn't fully know about myself. Is I'm obsessed with liars. I'm obsessed with the
Very
concept
interesting.
of people. I'm obsessed with the concept of people lying. I think
Hmm.
it's absolutely. I think it's absolutely brilliant. I think just, and I think that's intentionally why I sort of leaned so hard on that concept of like, well, Julia, she was lying, but it was sort of like not an unconscious lying, but a sort of protective, very personal lying. And
Yes.
then Lisa, like a very forward, let me create my story as she's talking sort of lying. And I think that just comes down to that element of control, because liars, like, they control like truth, they control reality, like they control
Yes.
how people think of them. It's like, to control facts is, I mean, it's the ultimate level. That concept alone to me is fascinating, to where I'm, you know, you get sort of two sides of the coin. You either have somebody, a very passionate, personal sort of character journey like Julia, or you have a sort of very controlling and very calculated and methodical sort of story of Lisa, and it's just personal preference. And I personally, again, with my obsession with liars, I think her sort of just ability to control things, ability to control the narrative, either successfully in the canon ending or unsuccessfully in the alternate ending, is I think supremely fascinating. So obviously, so for me, it's got to be Lisa.
Very interesting. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense from what you said previously. Julia is mine.
Good.
I mean, I guess from what you said, it's the more popular pick, and I think it really comes down to the one chapter where she's exploring the first test she puts for herself. That
humiliation, right?
Yeah, where she's got to take the picture of herself and post it online.
Yeah.
I said it in the previous Two Worlds episode, and I'll say it again. It is pretty outlandish that would be the first test that she would put to herself, and that she would even go through with it. But that chapter is far and away probably the most introspective that I've ever seen from any character, and it stands above all the rest when it comes to introspection. It is honestly one of the most interesting case studies of a person that I've ever seen, and it just makes me invest in Julia so much more. It really just makes her feel like such a 3D and fleshed out person.
I genuinely appreciate that. Thank you. I think the reason why it might have resonated, even just from a contextual standpoint, is because this was there was elements of it in some of Han's stories, 100%. But I really wanted to delve into somebody seeing wedgies as like shameful, as something humiliating. Like I really didn't want to shy away from that, where she looks in the mirror, deletes the photo, and breaks down.
Yes.
Like I think we and a lot of stories actually since then, and actually a lot of the stuff that JCCW has put out as well, shout out to him again, has really gone into that sort of element of wedgies being this very shameful and humiliating even fetish for the fetishists. And that's where I really wanted to not shy away from it. It's like, this isn't, that chapter really solidified. This is not going to be like wedgies are so great, this is so awesome. Like, she takes a picture of it and everyone is expecting, it's like, oh wow, I'm so turned on. No, deletes it, breaks down.
Yeah.
Complete failure. I think that's why it hits as hard as it does. And it's actually something that I am proud of, for sure.
Yes. And you absolutely should be. Shit, I had a different thought. Whatever. I don't remember what it was. But it was so good. Oh well, that happens to me all the time. That's one of the through lines. No, it won't. That's one of the through lines of this podcast. I forget shit all the time. What words I want to say, thoughts I have. Maybe there's just like a 5% chance it'll come back, 95% chance it won't. So, oh well.
Yeah, just put down the alcohol. I'm sure it'll come to you.
I mean, that's a very subtle through line of this podcast. Is people hear the clinkings and clickings of things. That's just me drinking and opening bottles and shit.
It's a nice ASMR aesthetic. It's
good. So what did you struggle with the most when writing the story? I think you touched on this a little bit previously.
Yeah, I struggled even fucking writing it. Like, again, just with my inexperience at the time. Like, I wasn't an idiot. Like, I was in first year university, but like, it just because of, like, I was studying business my whole life. I was studying even the actual classes that I was taking in between, like, nothing to do with writing. It was numbers. It was accounting. Yeah. Like, it's just this whole idea of this, how to express yourself creatively was so difficult for me. And that sort of thought in the back of my head of like, am I even doing this right? Like, the quotation marks does it have to go here? Do I have to start a new paragraph for this and that? So that led to like a lot of difficulties for me for sure. The other big struggle I think was just like I touched up on it before, just feeling like I had too little pieces to play with. I just felt like I wanted more. To be fair, I sort of ended it as soon as I really started to feel that, so it wasn't a long-standing struggle that I had, but that also didn't help in terms of feeling like I only had two characters that I could constantly write about. And I think, again, just because it was so early on in my sort of experience and career, even just thinking how to like describe wedgies and shit in an erotic way was tough. It's like, how do I wasn't thinking so like 5D chess as some people think about it now, where like, how do I avoid cliches, but also say something new, but also don't be too fetishy, but also give people what they want. Like, it's like, it wasn't even just about that. It's like I don't know. It was just simple shit. Like is it like a sword in her ass? I don't know. Like, could you say that? Like, I don't know. Like, it's like just the simple stuff was. Whenever I had to write one of the wedgies, I had to like it sort of became the thing. Like, I would write it, that scene, and then be like, that's not enough. I need to like add more. I need to make it more. What I need to describe something else. So that was sort of a process. Actually, shout outs, one last thing. Genuinely, fuck all of that. The most difficult thing was that fucking website. That was an absolute nightmare. Nobody fucking remembers how difficult that thing was. The word count limit that you had
Oh
to
yes.
abide by,
And there wasn't a specified limit that you ever could know.
you never knew. You never knew.
It was a guessing game every time.
You had to keep guessing, and you had to keep deleting and deleting, and just be like, fuck. But then you got to the point where, oh, god damn, the second part is going to be too long too.
Yep.
And then there was the time limit. Like, you couldn't post within 5 minutes of each other.
Yeah.
So you'd have it all edited. You'd go to post it and say, time to. You go, wait.
Yep.
Like, wow.
Yep. And then when if you did post too much in one and you clicked post because it didn't tell you that you exceeded the character limit, you would have to figure out where it cut off and where in the story you would have to go back and copy it.
Oh.
It's horrible.
That's honestly why DeviantArt fucking took so much of it, because writers were just like, oh, god, this is so much nicer. Like, this is like genuinely having to figure out the fucking rules on the website. Some of the youngins here, JC Zinabi, he don't know what we're talking about. It's okay. You're be happy, all right? Be happy
Yes.
with that.
Yeah, be happy with what you grew up with.
Yeah, seriously.
Lucky Fetish crawled so DeviantArt could fly.
Oh yeah. I still wish we had like our own site.
Yes.
But that would go on to. But it's a longer conversation. But essentially, when I think about and I was thinking of even doing a solo podcast on this one, just because I have some opinions about the fetish. DeviantArt is great, but it's like it's great for exposure because you have people that aren't into the fetish that get exposed to it because it's a general site. But at the same time, I really wish there was just a wedgie site that was just specifically for us, and it'd be so much easier to have the availability of the content, the access of the content, the curation and moderation of the content for sure. I don't think we're ever going to get there. If one person has a ton of either time or money, they might be able to just make something elaborate and bring everybody together, but even that would take like a super long time. And now that DeviantArt lets you get money off of shit, ain't nobody leaving.
Yeah,
like,
you'd have to generate the interest for it in the first place.
Yeah,
just having that really is why. Not so much anymore because it's so dead, but that is why I held Lucky Fetish so long as my end all be all of content, because it was this centralized location and the hub for all of the content.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to get that again. We're all too spread out. And so many people don't want to follow the rules. Well, that we all should.
I think right on the money. And I think, it just, even individual sites, even stuff for like the male stuff, like Wedgie Haven and whatever, they're no longer really anything anymore. And just that that whole need in general has just been superseded. There is a universe where a site does come along again that like brings everybody together, but it would have to be just it'd have to be the perfect storm. It'd have to be like an amazing
Yeah.
format that's like
Hmm.
easy to watch, read, post, submit. It'd have to have the interest garnering to get big names in. And I do generally think just because of the way the fetish has evolved, they would need a monetization aspect to it, which is just to me too much. I think
Yeah.
DeviantArt's just gonna, you know, beat the shit out of us for the next 50 years.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad site. Um, but it
No,
is
it's a bad
it's
site.
like
It's a bad site. Don't.
it got so much worse. It got so much worse.
Yeah.
They were out to get us. You don't understand. They
Purely
were out to
because of
get
the
us when they made.
update.
Yeah,
That's the
the
reason it's so
update.
shit now.
They were targeting us. Oh, you like to look at stuff that is like, the browse like this whole thing. Yeah,
You
get
like
rid
to
of that. We don't.
read?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Literature post? What are you, a fucking nerd? Are you kidding me? This is DeviantArt. What the? Oh, no, it's terrible. You can't. Like even just small things at the side. It's no longer like favorite collections that story is in. It's like just random favorite collections that are
Yep.
sort of similar to it. It's like, what the fuck are you recommending? Now they were out to get us. They were out to get us. We had somebody on the inside who was like just anti wedgie fetish and just sought to destroy us. But yeah, that update ruined a lot.
Yeah, that I think that is really what was the straw that broke the camel's back was just that update that made stories basically unreadable. Um,
Ugh.
it, and that's really the reason why I stopped linking the Lucky Fetish versions of the stories because you can't read them. Um, but it sounds like we do have another podcast that we can do, which is nice. Because I also
Oh
like
yeah,
discussing ideas and themes and things. So
100%,
I
100%.
think really the thing that could replicate that to some degree is just DeviantArt introducing a hashtag of some kind that you can browse, and then you can
Mm.
look at all the, like Instagram was before it got so fucking bad. Um,
It
just like
screams a bit of a yeah.
a wedgie or a girl wedgie hashtag, and everybody hashtags it their content, and then it's all in one place.
Yeah, I mean, there are sites that try to like make sub communities and things like that for things. There's some site, I forget the name of it, sort of like an A or something where you can sort of make, well, not like a subreddit. Subreddits do exist, but
Right.
sort of small communities for that with different sections and categories and whatever. I would love to see DeviantArt do something like that just because of how much content and how many people have made it their home. But even then, I mean, a hashtag is like a great start. I would absolutely love that. Don't get me wrong. But I don't know. I would just love in terms of maybe like a category system where there's a home page just for that
Right.
category, and then
Yeah.
there's you can sort by art, literature, and like I get that we're coming from this from a fetish standpoint, but like I don't understand why this is like breakthrough for fucking people at DeviantArt. Like all they want is people to aimlessly scroll, I guess, and
Yeah.
just look at new art and like not really care. But like man, it's like your whole site's around like making communities for art. Like
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
why'd you
I
fuck it up so bad?
So how about this then? Like a domain. Like for us it would
Oh,
be like wedgie.deviantart.com.
oh, now you're talking.
Yeah.
Now that's yeah. That
Yeah.
would be that would be the ultimate. And just like I get that with a certain level of how much you'd want control of and section and with categories, it would get hard because you'd have like theoretically hundreds of thousands of these categories out there. But even still, it's something that I think is 100% feasible,
Yeah.
and it's such a shame we don't have that.
Yeah. I think they have the staff for it. It's just a matter of people raising awareness to the staff of these things being wanted. I don't think they're going to do
Yeah.
it, but I think we could easily make that entire podcast. So we should save our ideas for it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. 100%.
All right. So to bring it back to Two Worlds, what's the thing you're most proud of with this?
Really, the lasting effect that it's had on people. That's really the main thing that I'm always. Whenever someone asks me like, "What are you the most proud of?" It's when somebody tells me that it's inspired them to do something and to write
Yeah.
something. There's no other acclimate that is
No.
worth anything, to be honest, outside of that. And I have had some people through some of my works, including Two Worlds, people say that it inspired them and whatnot, and that's 100% that I'm the most proud of. And I'm just proud I actually finished it.
Yes.
I'm not too much in the business of finishing things anymore. So the fact that I actually just signed, sealed, shishing, it's done. Fuck, thank God. Like that's why when you brought up like you can make a sequel, I was like, oh jeez. Like I don't want to fuck this up. Like it's a complete story. You can read it. You have some little treats, a little epilogue, a little alternate ending. You got some treats. But but no, I'm just happy it's finished. I'm happy it's made an impact on people, and I'm happy it's inspired anybody to do anything really. That's obviously positive for them, not negative.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean those honestly those are two probably the two biggest things that you can ask for in this community, like, especially like, and you can 100% understand this coming from the Lucky Fetish days where that was the hub. Have
Yeah.
just having a story finished. That is one of the biggest things. And
Oh,
having people be impacted enough to want to do something with that. That is like, yeah, those are the two major accolades, as you said. Those are the two biggest things, honestly, that I think you can ask for.
100%.
Okay. Um, what were your inspirations for this story? And you did touch on this a little bit
Oh,
before.
jeez. Do you want to talk more about Death Note or not? Yeah.
Yeah, no, like
No,
go
it's
whatever you want to say.
no. It's been we talked about it a lot. Obvious inspirations come from the idea of having two characters like Lucy and Daniela, having sort of coming up with having it centered around one character instead of coming it up as I come along, like in Death Note. Um, for sure inspired that. And I guess the last thing I'll really say, just in terms of inspirations, is I've said this on a couple other podcasts before, but just in general, Han's stories inspired me to just take it more seriously, and and to really just understand that there is potential for this medium to be something that can tell a serious story that can deal with complex themes.
Oh,
Eh,
oh.
what?
Please
What?
continue.
Controversial?
No, 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 not at all. The opposite.
Okay.
Please continue.
Okay, okay. No, no, no. It's really like no, seeing those stories and really understanding that wedgies can sort of be um, a fetish can that can be used in a way that isn't purely for just indulgence, but rather as what it really is in reality, which is a part of real people and a part of people that is something that can be a positive force or a very negative force in our life. It can be things. So to sort of see Hans's stories and to see to the level that they were done with really made me think like, wow, like this is like there's so much more with this, and I kind of want to throw my hat in the ring. I'll also give one more shout out. Um, and you know me, I always say it like it is. All of the absolutely terrible stories that were written at the time inspired me because I literally thought
And
I'm like,
still,
absolutely, I can do fucking better than this.
yeah,
Absolutely,
yes,
like I'm super like even before I was writing, I'm super critical of myself, man. And I would look at some fucking story and it'd be like, God, I could do better. I could absolutely do better than that. So it's pretty much Hans was like the positive, like, wow, that's what somebody could be. And then
yeah,
the lower part, the crappier stories, were like, wow, I'm actually better than that.
yeah.
I can boost myself. Not to be too negative, but
No,
like just
absolutely.
there were some, you know, it
There
was it
were
was it was a rough time.
there were a lot of there was a lot of garbage.
Yeah.
I'm gonna finish typing this thought out. Do you have anything else you want to say about that?
Yeah, go ahead, man. Everybody, yeah. Go ahead. Okay. I think
this is an idea that I've been preaching and promoting, at the very least publicly, since I did the Wedgie Talk episode with Hans back in 2018 or 2019, something like that.
Yeah.
But I've been thinking about it for way longer, and that is probably the inspiration for why I started writing in the fetish, because I've been writing way longer than that. And so, returning listeners to this podcast are very familiar with this idea that I've had: the Renaissance.
Yes. The Renaissance.
What you just said is exactly my thought process behind this fetish.
Mm-hmm.
The Renaissance, for anybody who doesn't know, is what I describe as a time period where the community went from writing garbage, run-of-the-mill stories to evolving and testing the boundaries of what was actually possible, and actually starting to tread water with legitimate New York Times best-selling type of writing. And it started in 2011 and 2015 really was, in a way, the golden age, in my mind, of the Renaissance. Because you had Lucy and Daniela, you had Two Worlds, and other stories that aren't coming to mind right away. Stories, basically, I want to do a podcast just on this. Just the Renaissance, the different eras of the community and writing specifically. But you had you had just all these terrible stories, and that's all we had for the longest time. And then 2011 hits, and we get stories like Luckily Unlucky, Sore Winner,
classics.
As You Wish, things like just things that Feeling the Fire Until It Burns. I'm never gonna forget that story. Like, things that blew everything else out of the water and opened the door. Like, not even open, just fucking blew the door off its hinges of what we could possibly do with writing in this community. And then 2015 was the next step. And we developed on that, and we evolved more, and we took it further. And it's continued since. I don't have like a legitimate timeline beyond that, so I'd have to do some more research on it. But that really, like, it I think that's what I think that I've never heard anybody else talk about this idea besides me. But I think that is one of the reasons why Two Worlds has had such a lasting impact and legacy. Is because it so many people think of it in line with that idea, where it was one of those stories that pushed boundaries and opened the door even further and pushed the envelope on what we could really do and how far we could go, and how, because I really do believe that everybody who is a writer in this community has the ability and the potential to write best-selling novels that just so happen to have wedgies in them.
Absolutely.
Like,
absolutely.
We started with stories that just jack off content, and they needed, and it was our desires and urges put out on paper. And so it was wedgies, just wedgies, and then it became wedgies with a little bit of character and development in the background, and then it basically I don't think there was ever just a balance between the two. I think it was just a shift where, and that was kind of that's where the Renaissance started, where that was what opened the door. Was we saw the shift, the focus turn to characters and development and plot, and wedgie sort of became a little bit more of a side. Oh, I could talk about that idea all day.
I think 100% you're on to. I think you definitely touch upon something that a lot of us, slightly older people in the community, at least who've been around for a while, can sort of conceptualize. Like I think 100% it was a lot of, you can go back and go to a bunch of different individual stories in and around that 2015 2016 time period and really be like, fuck, this is this really went places. And maybe the execution, you could argue for certain ones of them were like a bit off, but it was people like sort of just kind of stopping and just being like, you know, let's actually do something with this that's a little bit more. Let me integrate my fetish into my hobby of writing, for a lot of people. That's why I actually do consider like 2017, 2018 to be the greatest years of the fetish. I think that's really the golden age. The Renaissance that you're talking about happened a lot in 2016, but once it happened, then we actually got all the benefits. Then things started. I think as soon as like the big shift to DeviantArt first happened, and there was just a bunch of people just posting so much, like views were going up. It was this open forum. DeviantArt was a much more open place, and I think we took that like sort of renaissance that happened within our forum, then took it to a place that ended up being something where, like, I've talked about this a little bit with Hans before. You had Cecita pumping out like a story a day.
Yeah.
You had like you had overarching universes and things like Sleep All of Today's universe, mixing in with Arg Times characters, mixing in with Cecita throwing his hat in the ring as well. And within that, you still had bubbling sort of artists sort of starting to rise to the top, like as Mangi at the time, it's what I always call him, but Magni Poles now, sort of starting to come up. You had tournaments of characters and stuff that either went successfully or unsuccessfully.
Just as a real quick aside, just before you said AS Magni and then is now Magni Poles, I never put those pieces together. I never thought of them as the same person. Jesus Christ.
They're the same. You didn't realize that?
No.
He changed his name to AS Magni. I don't know why. Maybe his real name was Aaron Smith and he didn't want to reveal it. I don't fucking I don't know.
I mean, there's a lot of these old writers that I thought were just left the community entirely. Apparently they're still posting.
Well, that's why Hans never changed his name, is because he didn't want people to like think he was gone or think he was a new guy. Don't want to expose him, but that's why his name is still Hans Gutherson. But no, no, we had like a bunch of, like, you had that such consistent level of content with an overarching universe, with still experimental and like sort of other writers starting to come to the fray. Hans Gutherson, I think Shadow Mulder around that time too was starting to do stuff.
A little bit later.
Was that a little bit later? My timeline always gets fucked up. But stuff like that, and there was just so much that I think that first era is actually something where, and this really is a whole other podcast, but that's actually something that I think is like actually really missing right now. Right now we have all the demand in the world. The demand is at a sky high, and I don't think we have a lot of content, but it's not like centralized anymore. No, it's not like a center universe. And it's just everybody doing their own thing.
Yeah.
It's rough. It's rough. Like, so some people are trying, but that's why as soon as you get anybody like who's showing remotely that level, like refreshing lemonade. All of a sudden, he's like the most popular guy in the fucking community. Why? Because
Yeah.
he's doing shit that we were doing in 2018. Like,
Yeah.
it's just that like nobody else is doing it now.
Yeah.
Like, it's a whole nother thing, but essentially, to bring it all back, yes, I 100% think that Two Worlds was a part of that initial, like, let's do something differently.
It wasn't
And
initial though, because you had writers like Nicely Done, Cosby
that's
Rerun.
true.
What is the name of that person? You had Saseda back in the not a little bit late, like 2012, 2013, a little bit later than that. If Hans were here, he'd be able to tell me. The fucking
Yeah, he's
encyclopedia
the
himself.
encyclopedia. Yeah.
Oh,
It's I
those
would
those
argue though,
writers
as
were in 2011, and they set the bar, and we took it further.
the only thing I will say about the previous rate, and again, it might be something that going back into reading might change my mind. It's gonna be hard to kind of find the stories now, but like in terms of going back and I still think they were very much within the realm of being a wedgie fetish story. I could be wrong. But the way that I always read it was that they were more of just a raising of the bar of just quality, of just
Yes.
quality in general, of just, okay, here's actual characters. It's not Hinata and fucking whatever, like getting the same wedgie over and over again. Like, here's actual characters, here's OCs, here's something that's developing over time and whatnot. I think that more so raised the bar of quality, but I think the stuff in 2015, 2016 set the bar in terms of, like you're saying, we sort of running with it and really making it. This is just a story now. This isn't just a wedgie story. 100%.
Right, and that's kind of my idea behind it, is that the people in 2011 and 2012 showed us what the possibilities of what we could do, and 2015, 2016, we ran with those possibilities. We flew with them. And of course, I've been saying 2015 for the longest time, but since you included 2016, I guess that to plug myself a little bit, that kind of partially includes me, since I put the first part
Of
of
course.
I started. Although I don't think the first couple parts of my story are that great, but
we were all a part of this. Like,
right.
it's all just in different ways. I mean, you could even argue mine because, like you said, like compared to a lot of the views and stuff like that, like Two Worlds got so much little. So you could argue, like, if you're basing it off that, like, oh, like, was it really a part of the thing if not as many people read it or this and that? So no, I think 100%. Just if you were part of the creator verse around that time, you were witnessing and also being like, if you wrote stories, you were a part of that development. And no, I think it's even just purely as a breeding ground for authors rather, to get their feet and to get going. It's one of the most important times for our community and
Absolutely.
our fetish, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. 2015 to 2016 is really what I imagine as the golden age of the fetish.
I think the stuff that came after is the golden age, but the Renaissance definitely brought on. It's like the difference between like industrialization first happening and then us like actually getting the benefits of it. Like, okay, now we don't have to work like the however many 12-hour shifts at the conveyor belt. Now we're actually we have shit that's fancy. Though people argue society sucks.
Well,
anyway,
okay.
so.
So let me throw a little bit of a monkey wrench into your view of the 2017-2018 years as the golden age. You said earlier that your favorite part of this story is the ending, and that Two Worlds is one of the stories that helped really push the envelope for what we could do. The last part of this story was released in February 19th, 2016.
2016.
Yes.
But listen, that's the whole thing. I don't consider Two Worlds a part of the golden age. Friend Sessions is the fucking golden age.
Really?
That's my fucking baby. You don't understand. Like, this is a purely personal opinion that a lot of, I think a lot of people in the writing community might disagree with. like Friend Sessions is my fucking baby. Like that's my heart. Two Worlds was like how I got my step. Like
Mm.
from thinking from like a JoJo perspective, like
Ugh.
might go over your head,
God.
but like fucking Two Worlds is my bow, and like fucking Friend Sessions is my JoJo. Like I
Ugh.
use that to make the story. You clearly sound like you're not a big fan of JoJo, but that's okay. That's also not for
I will.
that's
I
also
will.
not for everybody's tea.
I'll speak on it for 2 seconds when you're done.
Okay. But no, like to me, like when I started writing Friend Sessions, the fact that I was able to do that and have like just to give people a slight alternative, that's sort of what I almost started to call myself, because I realized that there was this whole multiverse that was being built up around me and I just didn't want anything to do with it in terms of my creativity. But like no, it's, to me, like Two Worlds is the Renaissance, and Friend Sessions for me was the golden age, just in terms of my own writing, what I enjoy, and what I was putting out. So no, I'll stick by and say that that actually that sort of just talks. That's the difference that I have between the two
Okay.
periods, is a period of sort of feeling things out and a period of really taking it to a place.
Well, and so when I say the Renaissance, I mean like the Renaissance includes the work up to the Golden Age, and the Golden Age is like the best years of the Renaissance. It's like where we
Okay.
where we enjoy the splendor and it's always every episode happens to me. Forget the word I'm trying to think of. We enjoy the fruits of our labor, I guess. It's not quite the thing I wanted to say, but um, and then once that effect goes away, that's kind of when the Renaissance ends. And I need to do some more research into actually when
Yeah,
these
me
things
too.
happen.
Me too.
Um, just like a very quick diversion. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. The title itself, I knew was like, maybe, and I didn't really watch it. I never saw anything by it, and then I was kind of a guy that I interacted with for a little bit. I was in a thing with. Um, he kind of forced me to sit down and watch the first episode, and it was overly dramatic. Does not express
Yeah.
how I think
Yeah.
it just absolutely just insane things that happen, and it just moves way. It's like it's moving at 150 miles an hour, where I need to have things moving at 30 miles an hour.
Well, I mean, that's the beauty. That's the beauty, though, for people who are a big fan, is that you can actually, for people who end up enjoying his later stuff, you get to like appreciate that as sort of like this is him like figuring shit out, and like he's just sort of like starting to become a mangaka. And the anime makes it goofy enough to where it's like a fun little romp. Is it like the best stuff? No, but it's a oh fuck, this is where it all started.
Yeah, but
it sucks for new fans.
Have you read Naruto at all or watched Naruto?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so you're intimately familiar with how they introduce things, and every character acts as though it was already there when it's introduced way later in the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure takes that to the absolute maximum that can possibly take. Just watching the first episode, I was like, what the fuck? How did this happen? Where did this come from? What is going on? I couldn't follow it at all. But that's all I'm gonna say on that, because
sorry. It's not everybody's cup of tea. It's not everybody's cup of tea.
Yeah. Well, so the real reason that I brought up when the last part was released, and just to remind people, February 19, 2016. Where do you see Lisa and Julia now, 6 years later?
Involved in the story of Friend Sessions. They do it's a bit of a spoiler for the later parts, and I was trying to avoid it, but you unfortunately asked such a direct question. I mean, they are they do appear in the story. So where they are now is very much explained within my own writing. Um, again, I viewed like the reason I made the ending the canon ending. I just made it because I wanted them to sort of have that sort of happy future together. And I'm not opposed to doing happy endings. I don't, you know, I know some people sort of get into the mind that it's, it's sort of cliche and happy ending and sort of a thing. Like I don't like listen. Like you go through these struggles with these characters. You want to see them end up in a good place, and they are now, and they are now for sure. And I think it's chapter what is it like 16 or something like that I think Lisa rears her head. So if you want more details about for anybody listening who wants some more details about what happened with Lisa and Julia, deviantart.com/AnimePanties, friend sessions, chapter I believe 16. Give it a read anyways, but you can see the state of the two characters as they are now.
Hmm. Okay. Well, but that was also how long ago? How long ago did you release that chapter?
It's been a couple years.
So where would they be now?
Well, the arc is still going.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Like it's been like listen, I take a long time. That's not actually true. The Terra arc, the latest chapter I released after my 2-year hiatus was the conclusion to that arc. So you do kind of get a sort of resolution to like where they are now. I guess so. In a way, I guess I could answer it in terms of after that arc happened and sort of their little cameo and feature within the story happened. Where are they now? Honestly, fucking living their life like queens. Lisa, ultra successful, of course. Somebody like that would be able to rise the ranks of business and the corporate structure very easily, being able to manipulate people around her. And Julia is honestly along for the ride and someone who keeps Lisa in check. And as soon as she's the kind of person where Lisa starts to, she comes home from work and it's just like, ah, fuck, I heard around the water cooler that, this, my coworker is planning to do this. Maybe I should, lie to her and get her to do this. Julia just kind of bonks her on the head and just fucking stop it. Not everything is a scheme. Not everything is a lie. Like, not everything is a manipulation. Just,
Yeah.
God damn it. With a nice little dynamic to it. But no, they're absolutely chilling, like, living like queens.
Nice. Okay. Here's a question. And you know how I feel about this.
Oh, fuck. Here it comes.
Which ending do you believe truly fits the story, disregarding which ending you put as canon? Which ending do you think, if you were just to read it all the way through, which one do you think actually makes the most sense at the end?
Okay, the genuine answer to this is, if I were to go with the alternate ending, like I introduce a sort of arc of Julia discovering her own homosexuality, there is a way, and you can interpret the alternate ending as somewhat of a closure to that, where she rejects somebody trying to like manipulate her out of it. But to me, that story thread isn't complete without them getting together and without her, sort of. It's sort of, you could almost think of it as like a problematic way to look at it, but having it sort of literally wrenched out of her, like, no, you are, like, this is a part of you, and I'm the only one who's going to be persistent, initially my manipulation of you, to kind of get it out of you. So in that way, I do genuinely think that the ending that I have successfully pays off that arc the most. there's an argument to be made that she shouldn't have just gotten with Lisa at the end. I think that's why in my head I made an alternate ending, which is something that I never expected I would do. It just the inspiration just kind of came to me. But I think just to put a bow on Lisa's arc, to put a bow on Julia's whole acceptance and everything like that, and to have everything sort of end as neatly as I wanted to end them with, because I've spent so long with these characters. The ending that I put out was the ending that I put out, but I threw people a bone and said, you know what, there's a part of me that could kind of see why somebody wouldn't agree with this. Here's an alternate ending. Do with it as you will.
Yeah. And as I
Funny,
said,
as I re-released it on DeviantArt, I put the alternate ending first before the finale, because I don't know, maybe that's like an internal thing of like maybe it does fit. Who knows? Who knows?
As you know from listening to the previous Two Worlds podcast, I definitely believe that the alternative ending, I guess the non-canon ending, should be the true ending.
Yeah,
because
totally respectable view.
Yeah, I mean they are you only give them a semester of time in order to interact and have the entire story. And so it definitely it feels more. I guess it really just comes down to how realistic are you looking to make the story, because that was kind of my angle with almost all of my points in the previous Two Worlds episode. It was like it's like the non-canon ending feels like a more realistic way to end the story. So I guess it really comes down to like how realistic do you want people to view the story, and how realistic were you looking to make the story?
Well, ideally, I wanted people to feel as though it was a fitting end. I think maybe my execution of it helped with that.
Yes.
In terms of how specifically I executed it, but realistically, I think the reason why, you know, yourself and probably others as well might have that view is, again, just because I probably could have done more to sort of make that thread instead of like a complete shock, to have more threads of that earlier on. Again, just because of my mindset at the time, I didn't choose to do it, and I chose to go for the shock value.
Right.
And there are repercussions to that in terms of how realistic it is as a story. In hindsight, like, thank God I wrote that alternate ending, because instead your question would have been, is the ending even realistic at all? Instead of what we get now, which is just, you know, maybe the alternate ending is better. So thank God I even wrote that.
Right.
But no, genuinely, stuff like that, unfortunately, just comes down to just I wanted to end it sort of as soon as possible. But luckily, a bone was thrown, and you know, for the alternate. But no, I still do. And I tried my hardest, even though I knew it was going to be the last one. I still tried my hardest to try and make people, to sell them on this, to sell them on the fact that it's a good thing that they're in love. And but you know what? It either works or it doesn't, and that's the beauty of fiction. You either think something's good for somebody or not.
Right. And at the end of the day, you are the writer, so what you say goes. I think really what the only thing that lacks for me is that there isn't a part that explains Lisa's mindset, because you took such great strides to realistically and show how she's feeling, what she's thinking, what she's planning, and to not show something as huge and major as this, that especially for such a planner manipulator as Lisa, feels way more in line that it would need to be explained, because she would be thinking all these things, especially since so much of the story is so realistic and grounded, and it plays to reality so well. Like, greatest example is the Julia picture scene. Like, that's one of the most realistic and true to life parts of a story I've ever seen in my life. And beyond just the wedgie fetish, just in general in writing, because I've read tons and tons of books and novels and things. I think really that is the missing piece as to why I still like, if you had released a chapter explaining her mindset and her planning for it, I think I would go along with the canon ending, but because that's missing,
I guess the only thing that because of the way it sort of plays out, the only thing, I guess, because we lose that, we do gain, is essentially the idea that I think it is 100% possible to think that in the very end, like, Lisa just, like, maybe that isn't how she actually feels. Like, maybe she does genuinely just want to get with Julia so that she can get wedgies. And I mean, what happens as soon as it happens? She gets what she wants, right? Yep. I think that was something that was mentioned on the podcast you guys did before. I'm not going to go out of my way to say that something like that was completely intentional, but I do think there was a part of me for sure that was, when I was writing, because of how invested I had become into this idea of Lisa being in control of Julia, like, it's almost like I wanted to give her all that I wanted to give her so much of what she wanted and accomplished that you almost have to think, is this another play? Is this another manipulation? Now, of course, I go into things like the epilogue that goes into more of the happy ending. But again, even then, it's like they could start off like, you know, and what is a relationship even? Like, you could even argue that a relationship could literally just be founded on that. So that's really the only thing I guess I'll say, is that, yeah, we do lose that sense of like, okay, like, yeah, this is, you know, exactly just like, you know, what she was, you know, it was perfect build off of what she was thinking in that previous part. We lose that. But I do think it's somewhat entertaining to think about, you know, fuck, one last time she got her. Like, she got her one last time. Julia was this close. Julia was this close to breaking out of the spider's grip. But, she swarmed her one last time she gave in.
Yeah, I do wonder how much of that is just because you, like... Okay, this is gonna be a meaty thought, so I'm gonna take a quick break real quick.
Yep.
Maybe I'll decide to actually put in some fake sponsors right here. Who knows? I guess you'll be the one to know. But we will be right back after these potential